Justin Trudeau admits that he doesn't understand money, he doesn't think about policy, and he isn't doing his job. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show. Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. Now, if you've been anywhere near social media lately, you've probably seen this clip of Liberal leader Justin Trudeau smugly shrugging off a question about inflation and admitting that he just doesn't think about monetary policy. Here's that clip.
You mentioned the Bank of Canada's mandate. That mandate is actually expiring at the end of this year. If re-elected, it's probably the review or the extension of the mandate is probably the first big economic policy decision you'd make after the election. There's some talk of allowing the Bank of Canada to make some tweaks to the mandate to give it a little bit more flexibility to tolerate higher inflation, so it could, help stimulate the economy a little bit more in this very difficult time. Do you have a position on the mandate? Would you support a slightly higher tolerance for inflation?
I don't know. When I think about the biggest, most important economic policy this government, if re-elected, would move forward, you'll forgive me if I don't think about monetary policy.
He doesn't think about money. But of course, we already knew that. This is a guy who has racked up hundreds of billions of dollars in debt in the last 5 years. Thanks in large part to Justin Trudeau, who doesn't think about money apparently, Canada's debt has now surpassed $1 trillion. That's $1 million. As of this morning, Canada's national debt is $1,138,864,000,000. By 2025, it is expected to be $1.6 trillion. The individual share per Canadian of that debt is $30,000. And just keep in mind that that's only your share of the federal debt. You also owe a heck of a lot more in provincial debt. Now, the first clip I showed you, I will admit, is just the beginning of the clip. There's more context and I'm going to show you the full clip. But that one is the one that is making the rounds on social media. It is particularly damning to Justin Trudeau. So I wanted to show you that so that you have a little bit more context, but honestly, I'm not sure it's much better. Here is that full clip.
I don't know. When I think about the biggest, most important economic policy this government, if re-elected, would move forward, you'll forgive me if I don't think about monetary policy. You'll understand that I think about families. When we first got elected in 2015, the very first thing we did was raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% so we could lower them for the middle class.
So he doesn't think about money, and that's because he'd rather think about families, and in particular, how to raise taxes on successful Canadians. Now, I'm sure that last bit of the line there is in response to the NDP's platform, which was just released, and it is chock full of tax increases on what the NDP calls ultra-wealthy Canadians. But back to Trudeau and his silly gaffe. Trudeau is the Prime Minister of Canada. It is literally his job to think about the fiscal policy of this country. And this is especially true because his government has turned on the taps of spending, and in large part, that spending has been funded through the printing of money. So what is monetary policy and why is it important? Let me give you a very quick lesson on sound money. Canada has its own currency, and therefore we have a central bank. That is the Bank of Canada, our government's bank. A central bank controls the money supply. It determines how much money will be printed and what the corresponding interest rates in the country will be. The bank operates at an arm's length from the Trudeau government, but the Prime Minister works with the Bank of Canada to set its inflation rate. This happens every 5 years and is up for renewal this year, meaning that if Trudeau is re-elected, he will have to think about monetary policy at least a little bit. The Bank of Canada, in part, funded the enormous spending spree the government went on in order to keep the economy afloat during the pandemic. They printed money, lots and lots of money. And Economics 101 tells us that when you have more of something, it's worth less. The more money that is printed, the less value it holds. That's why inflation is up, way up. Statistics Canada's recent report showed that inflation is up 3.7% in July. The Bank of Canada aims to keep inflation at around 2%, so that is nearly double what our target is. And it's the fourth month in a row that it's been over 2%. So how does this impact Canadians? Well, it means the cost of everything is getting more expensive. It's part of the reason why housing prices are up. It's part of the reason why everything you buy, including food, gas, clothing, you name it, it costs more. Here are a few highlights from that Statistics Canada report. So gasoline prices have risen 30.9% since last July. The cost of owning a home rose 13.8% from last year, which is the sharpest increase since October 1987. Wow. The cost of food is up 1.7% from last year. Food at a restaurant is up 3.1%, and the cost of owning a car rose 5.5% from last year. And here is a nifty little ad that the Conservative Party put out pointing to how this monetary policy and inflation will hit you at the grocery store. Alongside this ad, popular Conservative MP Pierre Poilievre has been following this topic for months, and he's been ringing the alarm bell about the risks of printing money, risks of inflation, and how it will impact Canadian families. Now, perhaps this is why the media have mostly ignored Justin Trudeau's gaffe. They don't want Canadians to see how arrogant and how clueless he is, or how strong the Conservatives have been on this issue. In fact, the only coverage outside of us here at TNC.news that I saw on this gaffe was in Bloomberg, which is the financial news outlet. And this headline just made me shake my head. Here's the headline. It reads, "Tories pounce after Trudeau says monetary policy not a priority." Well, at least they covered it, and at least they made the important point that the Bank of Canada sets inflation rate every 5 years, and it's up for renewal this year. And of course, they let Canadians know that Trudeau said that he just doesn't think about money. He doesn't think about monetary policy. But as you can see from the headline, the story isn't about Trudeau's stupid comment. It's about those mean, awful Tories and how they're pouncing. Now, I've made this point on the podcast before, but this is a dirty little trick in the media in the way that they cover the news. It shows their bias, and it makes it clear who they are cheering for. When the Conservatives do something bad, or the Tory leader says something stupid, the headline is, Conservatives do something bad, or Tory leader says something stupid. But when the Liberals do something wrong, or the leader says something stupid, the headline switches and it turns back to the Conservatives saying, Conservatives pounce. Those mean, angry Conservatives are pouncing. They're attacking poor Trudeau just because monetary policy isn't his priority. So no matter what happens, the Conservatives are painted negatively and the Liberals are still painted positively. That's exactly what we've come to expect here in Canada. Justin Trudeau is a fool, and the legacy media is trying to hide that from you. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show.